Church of Christ. We continue our read and commentary of the Nag Hammadi library, and we are in Codex number 6. And we are now currently beginning the text titled The Perception of Understanding, sometimes also called the Concept of the Great Power. There is not a Wikipedia write-up of this particular text, but I'll do my best to give you a general preview of what we're about to read. Essentially, this book talks about our great power, and it documents the supreme God, in this case, the true Father, that He's transcendent and above all the powers, including the Old Testament God, of course, Jehovah or the Demiurge, the Father of flesh. He intervenes in history, and that's the Father of flesh, that's the Demiurge. The Father of spirit versus the Father of flesh. And the Father of flesh interferes in history, that He builds the ark and rescues Noah from the flood, is the spiritual Father. The first line of this tractate or text makes it clear that human salvation does not depend on whether or not you are redeemed from your wrongdoings in a moralistic sense through the redemption story of the Orthodox tale of how Christ came to use His blood to wash away all the sins. But instead, in Gnosticism, we understand in order to find our salvation, we must find what is known as that great power that is within all of us. And that great power is the Christ within, the hope of glory. And it is uniquely expressed through each of our seeds that's been planted in us. That's the analogy that Christ gives to that great power within, that seed. And the text essentially will break up history into 3 aeons, but we're not talking about aeons as in the aeons in the pleroma, but rather time periods. The first being the period of flesh, and then followed by the period of the soul, psychic man, and then finally pneumatic, which is the spiritual man, or the spiritual aeon, or spiritual age. And it then goes through how each of these ages go through a process of purging and destroying to ultimately bring about clarity through experience about exactly what it is our seed is going to bring forth. Much in the way as dirt fertilizes the seed, we too come to this realm, the economic realm, and mingle in the dirt or mud, if you will. And then that process or that mingling in the mud then feeds the seed or gives it its needed nutrients to then ferment and then ultimately sprout forth and grow into a tall tree, hopefully with many branches and bearing many useful fruit. And that's, again, another analogy that Christ gives. So let's start this. I'm reading from the translation by Frederick Weiss. It's written here, "He who will know our great power will become invisible, and fire will not be able to consume him." Though this power we're talking about, being invisible, is the common man, the flesh-oriented man, is not able to see why you have this ability to transform and mutate your struggles, whatever it happens to be, and quietly emanate or create your result, your accomplishment, bring that forth. And the fire, remember, in Gnosticism, it is not the light, but it is that element in this realm, the economic realm. There are 4 elements: earth, air, water, and fire. Now, the 3 are considered to be much in the way of how we gain wisdom, a wick. The fire is the one element that burns all those 3 and transforms them, and that is fire burns earth, and then, of course, it burns air, and then it burns water. Now, what that does assist in transforming those elements. And also, air feeds fire, and water feeds air, and then earth feeds water. And then ultimately fire then regenerates the earth element. So this is how the process works alchemically. It's the whole process known as the purging and the destroying to bring about a kind of possession. And then ultimately that possession is a formation. The spirit is being possessed into a new form, and then it eventually goes about to free itself again, and that cycle repeats itself in this realm. And so that's what we're having in this next sentence when it says, "But it will purge and destroy all of our possessions." And so when it's destroyed, we are then released, and then those that come back to this realm get possessed again. They get enticed to come back into this realm, and their spirits get entrapped. So when we think about possessions, we're not just thinking about material things, but we're also thinking about whatever our mind is entangled in, feels it needs, has to have. That's this realm. For everyone in whom my form will appear will be saved. And what is this form? That's the mother. The form is the nature of creation. That's the logos of this realm. That logos is substantial to the spiritual logos, known as the mother, then emanates into this realm to allow for formation or shaping, which is another way of saying making. You could say somewhere between forming and making and emanating is creating. And this brings about the process of salvation, because when you are able to bring forth the Christ within in some type of form, that's the accomplishment that you're bringing. It doesn't have to be a material form. It can also be a thought form. A concept is a form. It is a particular alignment of logic that is manifested and understood in this realm. And that process then also saves you from the age of 7 days up to 120 years. This means, doesn't matter what age, we're all bringing forth forms. It says here 120 years, so that's interesting in that, again, another hint, mankind lived longer thousands of years ago compared to how long he lives on average today. Those whom I constrained to gather all that is fallen and the writings of our great power, in order that he may inscribe your name in our great light, and their thoughts and their works may be ended. So that's the key, works being ended, that they may be purged and be scattered and be destroyed. It's really the consummation of this realm, consummation of the ages. It is a kind of substance that we are dissolving, disintegrating, and consuming, and be gathered in the place which no one in it sees. But you will see me, and you will prepare your dwelling places in our great power. So again, it's just comparing what the seen world with the unseen world, and how those that are in the dark, again, of course, are not seeing the light. But you see that light, and you emanate that light, but yet the ignorant don't see it. But it is that light that is that great power. And it is that light that is what is going to allow you to be liberated from the Kanomic realm. One more thing. One of our listeners, Kalamala, had asked this question. She had said, and this is from the video 2, the authoritative voice or teaching. What is the word of God? Why does it matter? They had asked, Sir, is the demiurge a manifestation of the Logos? Did the Logos come from the Pleroma in a similar manner as Sophia and the Word? Or did it arise in the Kanoma and maybe from or because of Sophia? Great question. We have to go to the secret book of John to understand where the Logos came about. We learn Christ is called many different names. One of them he's called Savior, but he's also referred to as Logos. Now, Logos means word. What we have, the difference between Logos and word, also known as logic, these can be interchanged, really. When we think about the Word of God, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, we're thinking about the process of how things come about in the pleroma. We don't use our physical body to emanate or to bring something about, but we don't use our hands to form things. We use essentially word. It says in the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. God said, let there be light, and there was light. So this is how we also do, we bring about things in the pleroma. So that's the word. That's the process by which things come about. Now in this realm, it comes about through work. Word and work, very similar, but by physical activity or mental activity, maybe using our hands to translate or speak. So there's using the flesh, really, to bring about whatever we're creating. But in the pleroma, again, we're just using word. Particular median is God. That is the very essence of God. It's the creative or emanating force in the universe or cosmos, whether it be in the pleroma or it be in the kanoma. That's why it's called God, because it's called Word. It is the essence of the median by which all things come about. All right. Now, Logos is the way in which we process making what we understand to make sense to us. Now, in the kanoma, it has one logic, but in the pleroma, it has a different logic. So it's the way we perceive what is logical to us to govern or manage things. or make sense of things, process again. And it takes on its own entity. It isn't a kind of aeon, but that aeon happens to be Christ. And Christ is both God, aeon, and man. Jesus is the man, but he became a aeon when he was initially created, known as the Christ. And then he returned into Jesus the man. When he had gained his Christship, he became Jesus Christ, and he went to the eighth heaven to stay with Sophia. He would sometimes go down to the seventh heaven to keep balance in this realm with Yod-Be-Off. So to answer your question, logos is really the mind, because Christ had asked for a gift from the mother when he decided to come to this realm, and he wanted the mind. And the reason he wanted the mind, without the mind, then no one will be able to receive his message. So he foresaw this. That is why he became Logos, because he wanted people to be able to make sense of the way things really are. And when he came to this realm, it brought about a kind of logos as well in this realm. But that was through Sophia, because they're one and the same. Even though they're separate, even though they're individual, they're one entity, they're consorts. So when Sophia came to this realm, she brought that with her. But her part of that logic that she had was flawed when it didn't recognize her counterpart. And it didn't recognize the Christ within herself. Basically, that resulted in a flawed logic, and it then birthed a kind of demon of sorts that's called the logic of this realm, or logos of this realm. So Christ is the pluralic logos, and then the logos of this realm is just called logos. Okay, so I don't know if that's really confusing or not, but hopefully that clarifies it, and if not, feel free to ask me further questions. Bring this up because we talked about logic here in this section. Continuing, know how what has departed came to be, in order that you may know how to discern what lives to become. Now, what's been departed? Well, what's been departed is when we left the pleroma, and how we became to be flesh beings. And when you get to know that, then you can discern what lives to become. Because this is really the only way you're going to appreciate becoming something more. If you don't understand that we are transcendental, we have great power, then how are you going to become that? Of what appearance that aeon is, or what kind it is, or how it will come to be. Why do you not ask what kind you will become, or rather, how you came to be? So this is the essence of this particular text or tractate, is to point out the importance of becoming. Becoming your great power. Discern what size the water is, that it is immeasurable and incomprehensible, both its beginning and its end. It supports the earth, it blows in the air where the gods and the angels are. But in him who is exalted above all these, there is the fear and the light. And in him are my writings revealed. So what does it mean? There is the fear and the light. Well, the fear is this realm, and the light is the pleroma realm. So in this aeon exists everything. Of course, this particular aeon is the Christ. But also remember, we talk about time frames, not just entities. And these time frames, there are 3 of them that's mentioned in this tractate. Then behold, the Spirit, and know where he is. He gave himself to men that they may receive life from him every day, since he has his life within him. He gives to them all. So again, reemphasizing that everybody has the Christ within, the hope of glory. And then the darkness together with Hades took the fire, and he, the darkness, were released from himself what is mine. So you remember when the demiurge wanted to animate the lifeless body, it gave away its gnosis. His eyes were not able to endure my light. After the spirits and the waters moved, the remainder came into being, the whole aeon of the creation and their powers. The fire came forth from them, and the power came in the midst of the powers. And the powers desired to see my image, and the soul became its replica. So this is where the soul came about. And remember the power within the powers. That's the power, the true power, the great power. That's called the great power versus the power, is in the pleroma, and the power comes from the Jehovah God in this realm, or the demiurge. And this is why we call it artificial or foreign, because it's a replica of the perfect pleroma, everything you see in this realm. This is the work that came into being. See what it is like, that before it comes into being, it does not see, because the aeon of the flesh came to be in the great bodies, and there were apportioned to them long days in the creation. For when they had polluted themselves and had entered into the flesh, the father of the flesh, the water, avenged himself. And why is it called this father of the flesh, the water? Remember that water represents the flow of life, the currency of life, where things flow. The flesh here in the demiurge has the power to bring about that flow in this realm through the practice of the tree of good and evil. Now remember, I'm not saying the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but I'm saying he's the God of good and evil. He calls himself the God of good and evil. And the current that's flowing through this universe is shaping the story of these aeons, and it does so through the power of the demiurge, analogous to water flowing. For when he had found that Noah was pious and worthy, and it is the father of the flesh who holds the angels in subjection, and he, Noah, preached piety for 120 years, and no one listened to him. And he made wooden ark, and whom he had found entered it, and the flood took place. Again, this is just suggesting father of the flesh is responsible for this flood. And thus Noah was saved with the sons. For if indeed the ark had not been meant for man to enter, then the water of the flood would not have come. In this way he intended and planned to save the gods and the angels and the powers and the greatness of all these, and the nourishment in the way of life. And he moves them from the aeon and nourishes them in the permanent places. And the judgment of the flesh was unleashed. Only the work of the power stood up. So it can get confusing. Are we talking about the monad, or are we talking about the demiurge? Essentially, really, the father of the flesh is the demiurge, and then the father of the spirit is the monad, the true father. So that's the first age, about the flood. So that's the first age, around the Noah time. Then came the next age. Next, the psychic aeon. It is a small one, which is mixed with bodies, by begetting in the souls and defiling them. For the first defilement of the creation found strength. So this particular age is not as long, but it's between the flood up to age 3, or the third aeon. And it beget every work, many works of wrath, anger, envy, malice, hatred, slander, contempt, war, lying, and evil counsel, sorrows and pleasures, baseness and defilements, falsehoods and diseases, evil judgments, that they decree according to their desires. And this is an age when mankind began to do all manner of things, all manner of wickedness. Whatever you can think in your mind, the most defiled thing you can imagine, man did it in this age. That's the soul. Why? Because the soul was not in touch with the spirit. It was detached from the spirit. It got a spark of intellect and some degree of gnosis and awareness, but it didn't know how to manage the great power. Yet you are sleeping, dreaming dreams. Wake up and return, taste and eat the true food. Hand out the word and the water of life. Cease from the evil lusts and desires and the teachings of the Anomoeans, evil hearsays that have no basis. Anomoeans is the teaching that God and Christ are separate. So in other words, we are separate from the Mother Father, a different kind of altogether. But in Gnosticism, we understand God's within us, and we are part of God, and God is part of us. And the mother of the fire was impotent. She brought the fire upon the soul and the earth. This is Achamoth, the flesh orientation of Sophia. And she burned all the dwellings that are in it, and its shepherd perished. Moreover, when she does not find anything else to burn, she will destroy herself. So we read about that in the previous couple of texts before, the Achamoth Sophia, that mets out karma. And it will become incorporeal without body, and it will burn matter until it has cleansed everything and all wickedness. For when it does not find anything else to burn, it will turn against itself until it has destroyed itself. This is the consummation of the ages, right? Just everything being consumed and dissolved. Then in this aeon, which is the psychic one, the man will come into being who knows the great power. He will receive me, and he will know me. He will drink from the milk of the mother. In fact, he will speak in parables. He will proclaim the aeon that is to come, just as he spoke in the first aeon of the flesh as Noah. Now concerning his words, which he uttered, he spoke in all of them in 72 tongues. Now remember, we've been talking about this. There's 72 main languages before they were scattered and everything at the Tower of Babel. 72 main nation. Now, of course, there are far more number of tribes that have intermingled and created far more than that since this time. And he opened the gates of the heavens with his words. And he put to shame the ruler of Hades. He raised the dead, and he destroyed his dominion. So this, of course, is referring to the Christ. Then a great disturbance took place. The archons raised up their wrath against him. They wanted to hand him over to the ruler of Hades. Then they recognized one of his followers. A fire took hold of his soul, and he, we're presuming it's Judas, maybe, handed him over. Since no one knew him, or presuming Jesus, they acted and seized him. They brought judgment upon themselves, and they delivered him up to the ruler of Hades. And they handed him over to Sasabic for 9 bronze coins. He prepared himself to go down and put them to shame. Then the ruler of Hades took him, and he found that the nature of his flesh could not be seized, in order to show it to the archons. But he was saying, "Who is this? What is this?" His word has abolished the law of the aeon. And see, remember, law is from the flesh-oriented version of logos, that is, from the demiurge, whereas Christ abolished the law. He is from the logos of the power of life. So in this case, we're talking about logos. He is from that place of logic that brings about power. And he was victorious over the command of the archons, and they were not able, by their work, rule over him. The archons searched after that which had come to pass. They did not know that this is the sign of their dissolution, and that it is the change of the aeon. So it's the changing of the ages. The sun set during the day. That day became dark. The evil spirits were troubled. And after these things he will appear ascending. And the sign of the aeon that is to come will appear. And the aeons will dissolve. So the previous 2 aeons will dissolve, basically is what it's saying. We begin to enter into the 3rd and final aeon. And those who know these things that were discussed in them will become blessed, and they will reveal them. And these are the people that assist in bringing about these new ages. And they will become blessed, since they will come to know the truth. For you have found rest in the heavens. Then many will follow him, and they will labor in their birthplaces. They will go about. They will write down his words according to their desire. Behold, these aeons have passed. What size is the water of the aeon that is dissolved? What dimensions do aeons have? How will men prepare themselves? And how will they be established? And how will they become indestructible aeons? But at first, after his preaching, it is he who proclaims the 2nd aeon and the 1st. And the 1st aeon perished in the course of time. He made the 1st aeon, going about in it until it perished. So Christ basically brought about everything. Remember, through him everything was created, and nothing through him was not created, while preaching 120 years in number. This is the perfect number that is highly exalted. He made the border of the west desolate, and he destroyed the east. Then your seed and those who wish to follow our great logos in his proclamation. Then the wrath of the archons burned. They were ashamed of their dissolution, and they fumed and were angry at the life. The cities were overturned, the mountains dissolved. The archon came with the archons of the western regions to the east, that place where the logos appeared at first. Then the earth trembled, and the cities were troubled. Moreover, the birds ate and were filled with their dead. The earth mourned together with the inhabited world. They became desolate. It's just talking about how the world as we know it is going to break down. And there'll be war, and mountains moved, and things turned upside down, and birds will have to feed on dead flesh because there's no other kinds of food, whatever. Then, when the times were completed, this wickedness arose mightily even until the final end of the Logos. Then the archon of the western regions arose, and from the east he will perform a work, and he will instruct men in his wickedness. So this is talking about powers that will raise up, first in the west and then in the east, and he wants to nullify all teaching. That's the word of true wisdom, while loving the lying wisdom. So these people will do whatever they can to get rid of the true message of the Christ. For he attacked the old, wishing to introduce wickedness and to put on dignity. He was incapable, because the defilement of his garments is great. Then he became angry. He appeared and desired to go up and to pass up to that place. He came and drew near, and he changed the commands. Then the time came until the child had grown up. When he had come to his maturity, then the archon sent the imitator to that man in order that they might know our great power. And they were expecting from him that he would perform for them a sign. And he bore great signs. And he reigned over the whole earth and all those who are under heaven. He placed his throne upon the end of the earth, for I shall make you God of the world. He will perform signs and wonders. Then they will turn from me, and they will go astray. So this is just, again, prophesizing the last age, that someone great is going to rise up and rule over the earth. We could think of it as sort of the Antichrist or the beast, whatever. Then those men who will follow after him will introduce circumcision, and he will pronounce judgment upon those who are from the uncircumcision, who are the true people. For in fact, he sent many preachers beforehand who preached on his behalf. This is not talking about physical circumcision. So when it says, and he will pronounce judgment upon those who are from the uncircumcision, who are the true people. Really, it's just saying there was no deformation of the original state. In this case, this is a bad analogy because whether you're circumcised or uncircumcised, I wouldn't consider circumcision to be a deformity. But this is the analogy that's being given here. Because you remember, in the Hebrew, they practice circumcision. That's why we're given this analogy. When he had completed the established time of the kingdom of the earth, then the cleansing of the souls will come, since wickedness is stronger than you. All the powers of the sea will tremble and dry up, and the firmament will not pour down dew. This sounds very similar to Revelation, right? This is basically the last and final age. The springs will cease, the rivers will not flow down to their springs, and the waters of the springs of the earth will cease. Then the depths will be laid bare, and they will open. The stars will grow in size, and the sun will cease. Now, how long this age is going to last, who knows? But it's just pointing out how everything is eventually just going to all fall apart in the universe. And I shall withdraw with everyone who will know me, and they will enter into the immeasurable light, where there is no one of the flesh, nor the wantonness of the first to seize them. They will be unhampered and holy, since nothing drags them down. I myself protect them, since they have holy garments, which the fire cannot touch, nor darkness, nor wind, nor a moment, so as to cause one to shut the eyes. And this is, of course, when everything gets completed and everybody goes to the higher realms, consummation of the age. Then he will come to destroy all of them, and they will be chastised until they become pure. Now, destroy is not in a violent way, but again, it's using metaphor about this process. Everything's going to dissolve. Moreover, their period, which was given to them to have power, which is a portion to them, is 1460 years. When the fire has consumed them all, and when it does not find anything else to burn, then it will perish by its own hand. Then the ... will be completed ... The second power ... The mercy will come ... through wisdom ... That's how mercy comes about, through wisdom. Then the firmaments will fall down into the depth. Then the sons of matter will perish. They will not be henceforth. And it says it's 140 years that they're going to rule. Here, we might consider that we're so advanced in technology, literally, we end up destroying the universe, is kind of what I'm getting from this. But that's just what I am seeing and being inspired to see as I read this. Then the souls will appear, who are holy through the light of the power, who is exalted above all powers, the immeasurable, the universal one. I and all those who will know me, and they will be in the aeon of beauty of the aeon of judgment, since they are ready in wisdom, having given glory to him who is in the incomprehensible unity. And they see him because of his will, which is in them. So again, it's not about worshiping Christ. It's not talking about judgment in the sense that, again, it's discernment, aeon of discernment. Talking here about anyone that knows me. And well, ultimately everybody's going to know the Christ, but it's a process. They all have shown, and they have found rest in his rest. And he will release the souls that are being punished, and they will come to be in purity. And they will see the saints and cry out to them. And we're talking about the souls that are punished are those that are captivated by the demiurge and its minions and aeons. And then when this dissolution happens, then Christ and Sophia will bring them into the higher realms to free them from those before this complete dissolution happens. And they will see the saints and cry out to them, have mercy on us, O power who art above all powers. For ... and in the tree of iniquity that exists ... And what's the tree of iniquity? It's the tree of good and evil. It's not the tree of knowledge, good and evil, nor is it the tree of life, but it's the tree of good and evil. To him their eyes. And they do not seek him because they do not seek us, nor do they believe us, but they acted according to the creation of the archons and other rulers. But we have acted according to our birth of the flesh, in the creation of the archons, which gives law. We also have come to be in the unchangeable aeon. And that's the end of this particular text. That wraps it up, so we'll continue on to the next text, which is Plato, Republic, 588a through 589b. I'll talk again soon. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, have a blessed day.